Hi, this is Jurgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. I thought I would address a topic that's very important for anyone who makes a living as a psychotherapist or coach or hypnotherapist of any kind, but it's a topic that's very seldom really addressed. And that is, how do you make the most out of the crucial second client session? Meaning, when a client comes in for session number two, how do you how do you start that session off in a way that really optimizes the chances for some really good outcomes? How do you make sure that you do your best to create a context where the client's responsiveness is as good as it can be? So here's a couple of ideas that have proven to work really well for me. So when the client comes in for the second session, the first question I very often ask after a little bit of chit chat, a little bit of banter is, okay, so since last week or since session number one, what changes have you made? I'm wondering what's different. So, and I'm wondering what's different both in terms of, what you might have done differently, how your internal experience might be different, how you might be thinking differently. So, which changes have you made? What's different? Now, once the person starts talking about the changes that they have made, I'm going to ask what else, and what else, and what else until they kind of dry out, until there's obviously nothing left. And then I ask the question, and what might still be an issue, if anything? So, what might still be an issue, if anything? Is there anything? Is there anything that we need to work on? The reason why I ask both of these questions, and I ask them in the particular sequence that I do, is because the way you frame things, and the sequence of the questioning has an enormous impact upon the responses that you actually evoke. So I'll give you a interesting example of this. The psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, the authors of the very excellent book Thinking Fast and Slow, talk about some very interesting experiments that they did where they would ask two questions. One question would be, how happy are you? And the second question would be, depending upon whether the person was single or in a relationship, what's your love life like? Or how's your dating life going? Now, when people were asked the general happiness question first, and then about the dating life second, there proved to be really no correlation between the two. But crucially, when the sequence of the questions were reversed, meaning when the person first was asked, how's your love life going? Or how's your dating life going? And then how happy would you say that you are generally? Now there was a huge correlation between the two. The people who reported to have a successful dating life, or who had been on successful dates, or had a good love life, when they answered, good, then that really influenced the general happiness question, and vice versa in the other direction. So the reason you want to probe for what's different, what changes have you made, you see, if you ask both questions, what's different, what changes have you made, and what might still be there to work on, is because you want to know both. You're curious to evoke both what's different, what changes the client has made, and you also are curious to discover what else might be there to be worked on. But crucially, the sequence of the questions matter. So by first asking what's different and what changes the person has made, that really amplifies those changes, and it makes it so that the person begins to view what's left through the filter of the changes that they have already made, meaning they're viewing what's still to be worked on through resources, through a filter of changes already successfully made. This really works. This really makes a difference in my experience. So something else to know also is, how you frame stuff really makes a difference. There's some studies showing, for example, that if you take radiation, for example, in terms of a particular cancer, and the statistics show that 68% survive for X amount of time when you use a particular radiation, and 32% die within the same time period. Now, to say 68% survive and 32% die, if we were completely rational, logical beings, it wouldn't really matter whether you framed it as 68% survive or 32% die. But in actuality, it really matters. It really matters in terms of what clients want to do, or patients wants to do in this case, and what physicians actually choose to do. It actually makes a huge difference whether you frame it as 68% survives, which gets a way higher compliance rate, or if you say that 38% die, gets a way lower compliance rate. Now, even if you want to talk about both benefits and risks, or upsides and downsides, it matters in terms of how people think and process stuff, what you present first. So also, when you see a client, you're really looking for honest responses. You really want to evoke what's actually true or accurate in their experience. And you might want to emphasize certain things more or less so that it's more conducive to helping people create changes. So if you could take a person or a client, and if you could ask the question, what's different, what's changed, or if you could ask, so what still remains to be worked on, that question will evoke different memory traces, so to speak. The person will do a selective scan of their own memory to find evidence that kind of supports either change or things to be worked on. So you could have a client who perhaps had made the exact amount of change, but they may talk about it very differently based upon which of those two questions you ask. Now, you want to know both. You don't want to be one of those agents of change who just ask for the positive stuff. You want to know both what's changed and B, what might there still be to be worked on. But the sequence that you do this in really, really matters. So start with the positive one, so that then when people start to look at what might be left to be changed, you're doing so through the successes, through the resources. This is one very simple and crucial distinction to amplify actual client responsiveness. Now, consider this, how you manage the second session, which for some reason is very seldom really written about in books and talked about, will have its base in how you have set up the first session, your framing. I advise against, when a new client calls, to just say, that's easy, We do it all the time, to really sell that confident, we can make this happen. You're going to change. It's guaranteed. Because, and here's why. There's a tendency in the hypnosis world to really view it often as a confidence game. As just project confidence, just have belief, just kind of work up client expectancy, and that's the best thing to do. Well, sometimes, or to some extent, the only challenge is, after a session, you might get 1 out of 4 responses from a client, either, complete change, full resolution of whatever they came there for, meaning, the phobia is gone, or they're no longer depressed, or they no longer want cigarettes, full resolution. You might get a partial change, might be a huge change where there's still a little bit to be done. It might be moderate change, might be minor change, but there's some movement in a positive direction. This is, of course, a very common one. You might get no change whatsoever. And you might also get worse. I actually feel worse. I'm actually more obsessed or more jealous or more scared than I've ever been since our last session. Anyone who's seen a lot of clients will have had clients respond in those ways. You need a framework. You need a way of presenting what you do that takes into account all of those 4 responses, because you're going to get all of them if you see clients consistently. If your frame is just, that's easy, we do it all the time, you might be doing great if you get a full resolution after the first session, or at least some major improvements. But if you get no change, or the client has become worse, you're likely dead. You've likely lost all credibility with that particular client. So my challenge to you is, you need a way to frame what you do that is optimistic, that is hopeful, that really utilizes positive expectancy, because that does make a difference. You have to combine that with a way of framing things that also allows for all those responses in such a way that, irrespective of which one you get, you still have client trust, credibility, and you can still utilize the response to help them move towards changes. So how might you do that? That's a question I would like for you to ponder. If you would like my specific solutions to that, you can take a look at my latest book, Provocative Suggestions, which is to quite a bit of an extent about expectation management and how you actually do it with clients in the real world. So play with this, use this, hope this was useful. Any thoughts, comments, feel free to post them. Till next time, do great work.